I've been talking about TERFs, dunking on TERFs, responding to TERFs, debating TERFs, and everything else that you under the sun that has to do with dunking on them for the better part of 4 or 5 years now. And something that has never changed in all of their rhetoric consistently since I started talking about politics and, talking about what TERFs believe has been their insistence on using the think of the children, what about the children angle when it comes to their bigotry. You see, for those of you guys that don't know what a TERF is an acronym. It stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. Now, as a lefty, the term radical feminist might sound almost appealing, right? If you're a progressive person, radical feminism, generally it sounds like something appealing, especially in this day and age when it feels like the Andrew Tates of the world are becoming more prominent than ever. It feels like that would be an appealing thing, but the trans exclusionary is a very important part of that label. You see, most TERFs tend to focus on the idea that it is not the patriarchy or systems of oppression such as capitalism or imperialist and Western right-wing conservative hegemonic values and whatnot that are keeping women down in society. No. Not what actual feminist, academics and feminist activists historically have always advocated against. None of those things. No. Instead, the real problem that women today face is the threat of men dressing up as women to sneak into women's bathrooms and other women's spaces to sexually assault them or to outdo them at doing at womaning, I guess, or doing things that women should I guess only be allowed to do if they have a vagina, I guess. That is more or less what they believe is going on. They think that mostly trans women are men who are trying to impede into their spaces, and they've got a lot of different conspiracy theories. You see, some TERFs are lesbians who believe that trans women are men trying to infiltrate lesbian spaces and make cis lesbians have sex with them. Some believe they are sexual predators who are trying to use this as an excuse to get into women's spaces. Some think they are some kind of cheater who are using the label of woman to do things like outdo cis women in sports and whatnot. They've got a lot of very interesting ideas. Now, overwhelmingly, the narrative tends to whittle down to children, trans children, almost always young, what they say are boys, being groomed into becoming trans. On the other side of the coin, they also talk about these, what they say to be, young girls being groomed into being trans boys if they are even slightly interested in anything masculine or traditionally masculine. Now, of course, these ideas are completely deranged. If you want to go look for any examples of these happening, you may find one or two very out there examples of this kid had being trans pushed on them by a parent or something, but overwhelmingly this is not a thing that's occurring. 99.9 repeating percent of the time, you've got a trans kid who's having cis normativity pushed onto them by a parent or a family member or a guardian, and not the other way around. Not the other way around. That does not generally happen. And nonetheless, that is what they claim. Though it's always been bullshit, hasn't it? We always knew it was bullshit. We've always known that, if a man wants to go into a woman's bathroom or locker room and, sexually assault a woman, they don't need to put on a dress and a wig and live their lives as, a woman to do it. This isn't a thing that needs to happen. If you want to go and do that, you just go and do that. And not to mention every other example I listed, there are very obvious reasons as to why those ideas are stupid. And yet, the TERFs continue to push them. So you're left to think, maybe this isn't actually what they believe. Maybe these weird dog whistles, these weird euphemisms, maybe that is what they are. maybe they aren't being honest about what they believe. Maybe, just like the right and conservatives, maybe they're projecting. Now, I can't speak for all TERFs here, though I will say TERFs like to speak for all trans people whenever they like to, spread some random idea about trans people being groomers. Though I'd like to point this out, because this is a tweet exchange that I saw between a lefty and a TERF on Twitter. I saw this with my very own two eyes. I genuinely considered getting involved, but I instead quote tweeted it, which the person in question was quickly banned by Twitter, and so I had to, screenshot the tweet exchange before it got deleted, and thankfully I saved it, so we don't have to worry about it being gone forever. But I do feel, despite this person being banned, and they specifically no longer being an issue on, the platform of Twitter anymore, I think it's important to go over what they said, because I think it reveals a lot of what TERFs really mean when they say all that bullshit I mentioned before. So here's the interaction. Quote-unquote, 12-year-old children are the scum of the earth is one of the most unhinged statements I've ever seen. This was in response to this person saying 12-year-old boys are the scum of the earth. And so the TERF replies, 12-year-old male children are already full-blown degenerates. Not my fault. Take issue with their behavior instead of getting outraged at me for simply describing what they do. Skull emoji, skull emoji. If somebody uses skull emojis at the end of an argument, they've lost, and they are coping hard. Then the lefty replies, quote-unquote, yeah, I'm definitely not a pedophile. I just think it's so obvious that little boys are sex degenerates who are just always want sex, unquote. You are ill. This is in response to a TERF saying that little boys who get raped by, older women or older men, for that matter, were not in fact raped because in this TERF's mind, all men are, and all boys are degenerate sex perverts who deserve it or want it deep down. Does that sound familiar? Where have we heard that kind of talk before? Anyway, let's read the reply here because it's very, very mask off. Young boys are degenerates beyond any help. I wouldn't even oppose them getting their ass raped by grown men. Parentheses, they deserve that. If it wasn't for the risk that other grown-ass men would also start to advocate for pedophilia on girls. I can't care less about boys. So, I've talked about for a very, very long time that the vast majority of TERFs hate men. I mean, it's obvious. Go look at any TERF rhetoric or TERF account. They don't just hate trans women, they hate men. And they just think trans women are men, escaping escaping accountability for being men, basically. So with that said, it shouldn't surprise you what they actually believe about young boys. In fact, many of these TERFs were themselves sexually assaulted when they were younger and carry with them a hatred of men, and sometimes that hatred even carries on to young boys. It's not just older men that are the potential victimizers or all victimizers in her head, but all males. That includes children. And that is how these people think. If you've ever thought about how that is a massive stretch, no, it is not. It absolutely is not. Every single popular TERF figure that I have ever seen talk about why they believe what they believe brings up how a man sexually assaulted them and how that makes them uncomfortable around trans women. I'm sorry, is this not extremely common? J.K. Rowling, for starters. It is overwhelmingly common, and when you listen to the shit they say, there's always this through line of essentialization. They see men as being a violent, sexually violent force of nature, almost. And they essentialize that to the penis. They see the penis as being representative. You can see, you find this in a lot of rad femme literature, by the way. They essentialize the penis as being like a tool of oppression towards women. There are a lot of TERFs who you'll see saying that like straight women are basically traitors to womankind, who say that trans men are long lost sisters who've lost their way, or traitors to womankind as well if they're more hateful. But at the end of the day, they almost always essentialize the oppression of women through men's penises. And so when that happens, you almost always see that come through with like men who have penises are pretending to be women to get into women's spaces. That is almost always the shit they say. And of course they're talking about the whole like think of the children thing. What do you think they think of trans kids? If they believe that like a trans woman is a man trying to get into women's spaces to predate on them, what do you think they actually think of underage trans girls? They don't believe trans kids exist. They don't believe trans people exist. They don't believe trans women are real. They think trans women are either at best delusional and at worst sexual predators pretending to be women. So what do you think they think that trans kids are? Now, best case scenario, from what I've seen, they think they are unfortunate, brainwashed victims of the gender ideology. That's the case a lot of the time. If you go to, say, our femcells, or ever since that got taken down, I believe it's been taken down. I haven't seen any posts from it in a while. Or if you go to any other femcell community where you will find a very high concentration of TERFs, you will see this kind of stuff. This is how they talk about those stories of like teenage boys being raped by their fully fucking grown adult teacher. They'll be like, yeah, young boys are fucking pervert degenerates. I bet he liked it. It's almost like the reverse of like the conservative nice thing, you know? It's like horseshoe theory, right? On the right, you've got the, nice, bro. Yeah, nice. Where were these teachers when I was a kid? Yeah, bro, nice. Yeah, fuck, that kid deserves a high five. That teacher deserves a fucking fist bump. Give that teacher a promotion. How you've all seen that from the conservative accounts, right? That's all you hear from the right. But then the TERFs, you hear them saying shit like this in their communities. And it really is just a perfect demonstration of horseshoe theory. And honestly, an even better demonstration of horseshoe theory is, frankly, the way they describe all of this almost sounds like how like normal incels describe women. You know, like how incels describe women overwhelmingly. Like, yeah, they're fucking whores. If they want to have sex with Chad, but they don't want to have sex with me. Yeah, they're fucking whores. Like, it does sound kind of like that, doesn't it? Like that sort of ingrained hatred, like you know what this entire group wants or does sexually, that you believe that they are in fact all perverts, but not for the right people. It's very bizarre. The connections are there. Do you guys agree? TERFs are sad excuses of human beings? They are indeed. I want to remind you, by the way, TERFs have absolutely no problem saying that all trans people are sexual predators, so take with that what you will. Whoa, chill out, Freya P. Kark. You gotta say that, say in a video game. In a video game, okay? In a video game. Yeah, I do think that there's a lot of through lines and connections to, like, the incel shit and femcel stuff and the TERF ideology. And then here we've just got the most mask-off stuff we've ever seen. Just look at this. Damn. You know, it really fits that this person has, like, the most, like, early 20s radfem Twitter profile I've ever seen, you know? Like the sepia to black and white profile picture of a woman in all black. You know, like random emojis that are probably for iPhones, so I can't see them because they have a multi-$1,000 phone, and just a name that has absolutely no context in which I can understand it, and a star, which probably stands for some astrology shit. What an evidently turfy Twitter account. Xanderhal, also don't forget that TERFs will try to push the trans genocide with conservative even further, which is cringe. Listen, right now, Republicans are trying to erase trans people, both, literally, like figurative, like tangibly, sorry, like literally and tangibly, ideologically, and politically from society. Just completely erase them. No history of them. They are not to be taught about. They're not to be shown on TV. They are not to be depicted as characters in any fiction or non-fiction media. Just to be completely erased. Thanos snapped from memory is what they want. And you better believe that TERFs, who claim to be feminists, have found found themselves allying with Republicans and conservatives who have, you find are just pushing against feminism on every other front, anti-abortion and all that, anti maternity leave, anti free healthcare, which overwhelmingly would benefit women of color who are economically the least well off in America and thus have the worst access to sexual reproductive health care. I don't know. Isn't it just interesting how these TERFs, who are overwhelmingly wealthy white women that only seem to care about shitting on, gender, people who have gender ideology or gender identities that are not the norm, aren't actually paying attention to things that tend to really hurt women, isn't that interesting? It's almost like TERFs aren't feminists. They're just hateful people who've dog whistled a narrative about how they are actually progressives fighting against a narrative or fighting against an anti-woman crusade. It's all dog whistling. I think it makes sense that Britain is TERF Island because they colonized the world, erasing diverse gender expressions and indigenous tribes. Listen, the British really do fit as being the epicenter of TERFs, more so than anything because the British are better than anybody else at rewriting history. Like, how much history have the British rewritten that we don't even know they rewrote? Because they're the only source. Probably way more than we even know, right? History is written by the victors, and the fucking British were around for a long time, the British Empire. So, yeah. It makes sense. No, history is written by historians. Wait, history isn't written by historians. That's not what a historian is. A historian is somebody that studies history. Do historians actively, write down what's happening now for future historians? I mean, I guess they could, but I don't think that's, the job of historians. Regardless, TERFs. Cringe. And if they're gonna call trans people groomers, then you better believe I'm gonna do it too. TERFs are groomers. There you go. That is the thesis of this video. If TERFs are gonna call trans people groomers, then I'll call TERFs groomers. And the fun thing is, there's actually evidence ideologically and circumstantially, and even for the sake of anecdotally, of that being the case. Far less for the case of trans people. There's nowhere in the ideology of trans people being valid and all of that says that any of the things that TERFs say about, trans activists are true. I feel like I've substantiated my points here a lot better than they have. So take with that what you will. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like. This person will no doubt burn very deep in hell, possibly further in hell than Magdalene Burns. Who remembers Magdalene Burns? This is like a really far back pull I'm going from here, but back when I first started doing politics on the YouTubes, I responded to a TERF who brought up another TERF by the name of Magdalene Burns, who is this British TERF who is very popular and very beloved in the TERF sphere, who got brain cancer and died. So I did a whole bit, this is back when I lived in Florida, I did a whole bit where I screamed down to hell at Magdalene Burns' hellfire wrought soul. And that was very, very fun. That was a very fun bit. I liked that a lot. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, subscribe and ring the bell icon if you want to see more from me so YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload a new video. And of course, be sure to support me financially on my website, xanderhall.com/live, in the form of a donation, a sub, or a gifted sub if you've got the money for it and you want to support me directly financially. We don't have any donos yet today, but who knows? Maybe we'll get our first one. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for supporting me no matter how you do. I really appreciate it, and have a good one.